today the session of Utopia and Sustainability. We're proud to announce that we will present in the topic of post-COVID societies. Are cities in the future going to be more sustainable or not? Is this going to be a new challenge, or is this an opportunity for sustainability? We will be exploring this topic with our distinguished speakers. Before getting to the speakers, I would like to make a brief introduction to what the Commission is doing and how you can get involved in it. As you may know, Utopia is a program that includes students as well as include many different sectors of the university at the organizational level and also with external partners. Now, we have a chapter for sustainability in each of the Utopia universities, and you can send us a message to one of our emails if you want to be part of it. This session has been possibly organized due to the collaboration of all our enthusiastic students at the Utopian Commission for Sustainability. I will be presenting shortly. From Fabra, Pompeu Fabra University, Barcelona, we have Anna. Anna has been behind the scenes and has been setting up this event, and you can contact her at any moment. Now, moving on, we have from Gothenburg and our host university for this session, we have Carl and we have Claudia, and they are in charge of the chapter of sustainability in there. And moreover, from CY Paris, we have Jessica and Guillaume, who has been working hard on the presentation of this event. Finally, representing Brussels and representing the Vrije University from Brussels, we have Maria Rebran and myself, who have been also participating in this. Now, we want to do this session as interactive as possible. We want to involve the audience, we have to involve the speakers, and we have to have a great discussion. So because of that, we have implemented Mentee. You will be seeing the link in the chat, and we really encourage you to participate and to bring your opinions as much as you wish. The link should be already in the chat, and now we have our first question for the audience. We want to know, if you describe in 1 or 2 words, what will the post-COVID city look like for you? And while you think about it, I will have the honor to introduce our speakers. First, we have the researcher Annika Paldanius from Gothenburg University. Annika, please, you have the floor, and we want to ask you, where are you based right now? Which city, and is your city sustainable, and why?
I'm in Gothenburg, and yeah, it has, like all cities, some problems built in, of course. Things that always can be better, but things that are good and sustainable is that we have lots of green space, and it gets easier to take your bike, but we still have some problems with like social segregation, and I think COVID-19 has also shown that it has been spreading much more in some parts of the city than in others. And yeah, we do have some problems, but I think the city planners get more and more aware of them, and yeah, there are still things that is good as well.
You're moved.
Annika is one of our researchers presenting green spaces and urbanity. She will be bringing light on how green spaces can improve the conditions of our cities. In the same light of research, we have Professor Francesc Baró, and I have the same question for you, Francesc. Where are you right now, and what are the challenges in your city?
Thank you, Ricardo. I hope everybody can hear me well. Thanks for the invitation to this debate and for the introduction. Actually, I'm right now in Barcelona, my city, let's say, where I was born. So not in Brussels yet. I'm planning to move in the summer there in Brussels. I would say that Barcelona is a quite complex city. It's a very compact city, a very densely populated city in Europe. So many challenges for these kind of cities. At the same time, Barcelona is doing a lot of, in the last, let's say, decades or years, it's doing a lot of effort in trying to be a, let's say, a greener city, trying to. It's difficult to make new parks or gardens in so compact cities, in cities like Barcelona, but they're doing an effort of building new green corridors, trying to do some new pocket parks, for example. And at the same time, the city is also doing a lot of effort in trying to improve sustainable mobility. So the number of bikers, for example, have been increasing in the last years quite substantially. But of course, there are still a lot of challenges, and adaptation to climate change is one big challenge, especially in terms of heat waves. Also, I would say air pollution is still a big issue in Barcelona because there is still a lot of traffic, and some neighborhoods are still quite polluted. And yeah, I would say that that would be enough, I guess, because we don't have much time. Thanks.
Thank you, Francesc. And no worries for that. There will be more time during this exciting hour of debate. Now, from CY Paris, we have our guest speaker, Marie-Léa Rousseau. Marie-Léa Rousseau, please tell us, where are you right now? How is the sustainability in your city?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. So right now, I live in Paris. But my favorite city is Berlin, where I had the opportunity to study as an Erasmus student in 2012. And in France, we say that the first impression is often the right one, especially when it's a bad one. And if I'm talking about that, it's because my perception of Berlin has evolved a lot over the time. First, as a tourist, second, as a citizen, and third now as a researcher. And I remember that the first time I went there, I found the city pretty unsettling because it still looked like a big building site more than 20 years after the German reunification. You know, the main street was full of cranes. But, you know, this perception changed a lot when I began living there, and that I experienced discovering this city, especially the transport system and the fact that we could access to the railway platform freely, and it felt so easy to move from one side of the city to the other. And another aspect that I like really a lot, it's, you know, how they let nature free and the use of their park. And now, of course, as a researcher, I have another perception because there are a lot of challenges, but, you know, I don't want to talk too much, but it's really fascinating, the urban trajectory of this city, especially these last 10 years.
Thank you, Marie. And now, finally, we have Evelise Pereira from Pompeu University, Fabra. Now, Evelise, please tell us how's the situation in your city, and how do you find it in terms of sustainability?
Hi, good morning, Ricardo and everyone. Thank you for the invitation as well. And I'm near Francesc. Actually, I'm here in Barcelona, in the Pompeu Fabra University and the ISGlobal. So I used to work near the sea. And I think Francesc has presented the main topics that is included in Barcelona. So I think just to add, one important point that I think Barcelona has. I'm not from here, and when I arrived Barcelona, I thought that this is a strength from the city, that Barcelona has a lot of participation processes, and they have a lot of local initiatives that are instituted and recognized by the city. So I think as Francesc has mentioned, Barcelona has a lot of problems as being a compact city and a lot of positive issues, but the participatory processes that the city promotes, I think it's important also to address how to think about the future and how to think about the equality of the right of the city. So I think this is the main topic that I want to address in Barcelona.
Thank you, Evelise. We're glad to see that we have 2 speakers from Barcelona, 1 speaker from Gothenburg, and 1 speaker from Paris. We will see how these different views and the different regions in Europe, they intertwine, they have the same challenges, or maybe they have also new opportunities to share among each other. Now we will be moving on to the Mentee results, and like that we will kick out our discussion. I see the results right now on the screen to the question of post-COVID society, and we see that there are always the same views from the students. Some students saying that it's going to be more mobile, more digital, green, clean, distance working, a space for initiative, and more distinct. Also, it's going to be active, compact, and more global. With those words in mind, we want to invite the speakers, we want to invite Annika to tell us about your field of research and how do you think that these words actually are going to be present in those green areas that we're going to be having in the future. Annika, please.
I'm not sure I got the question right.
Yes, in your field of research, how do you think these words and how do you think these words are going to play an impact in the green spaces and healthy urbanity?
More green areas, absolutely. I think that is a good idea. We have seen, like the last year in the pandemic, that people we all want to meet each other, and when we have not been able to do that inside, we have been out more. And here in Sweden, where we have this thing called allemansrätten, people have gone out to the woods, to the forests, and actually in a way that some researchers say have been not too good for the other species living there. I think it is very important that we organize our cities in a way that can let us see the beauty of nature also in the cities. And research has also shown that if we have like green environments around where we live, we have better relationships to our neighbors, because it is like a place where we can socialize. So that makes also the city to be more inclusive, which I see is a big word here. And then, of course, some words are maybe not so easy to get together. Like we want the city to be like less people in the cities, but also we want it to be more compact. And I think that maybe the city planners have been looking for like densification of the cities. Here in Sweden, we want to build new buildings in the city, not outside. But I think that maybe it will turn a little, and we will be more aware of that we also need spaces in the city, not just to live and to work and to transport us. We also need places for like recreation and exercising, and maybe also places where it is quiet in the city.
Thank you. Annika, I think that Francesc, you also mentioned that in your research you will be talking about nature and the relation to nature. So I'm wondering, do you have any reactions, or would you like to present your research and insights on the role of nature and green cities and sustainability? I think you can now share your screen.
Yeah, I will use my slides to talk about these things that we have started to discuss, if it's okay. Okay, let me just open. Okay, why I don't see it now? Okay, now it's there. Can you see it?
No. Yeah.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So I will try to stick to the more or less 5 minutes that you mentioned or you indicated. I was asked to talk about a bit the role of urban nature during the COVID lockdowns and the implications of this for sustainable urbanism. I think it's an exciting topic, given that we are still in this pandemic. So yeah. Let's see if I can just also trigger some discussion for afterwards. Okay, I wanted to start with some pictures from my city, from Barcelona. This actually is pictures from recovering patients from COVID that were in intensive care units. And this is a hospital near the sea in Barcelona. It's called Hospital del Mar, so hospital from the sea. And they are very lucky because they have these nice views to the beach and the Sea of Barcelona. And this is very interesting, I think, because they did this effort. They implemented this effort during the first outbreak or the first peak of the COVID, where they were just moving these recovering patients in front of the sea, so they could, let's say, have a nice view of this. And this actually comes a little bit from the this already quite old science article that was published in Science in 1984, actually, with what's called View Through a Window May Influence Recovery from Surgery. So this was a very influential article that is still in place because, as you can see, people let's say medical centers are still let's say, influence or using this approach for the recovery of patients. Okay, so basically, just I wanted to show very briefly some of the evidence that have been published so far about the role of urban nature during the COVID-19 lockdowns. There has been a kind of explosion of publications related to this topic. Well, maybe not an explosion, but certainly several papers have already been published. I'm showing you here just some of them. And you can see that, for example, in Oslo, there was an increase in the use of recreation, an increase of the recreational use of green spaces, quite substantial. Then you have also a lot of papers that they did during the first peak of the pandemic. They just sent online surveys to see what was the relationship between the contact with blue-green spaces and mental health. In general, as you will see, these are, let's say that the contact or the access to green spaces was positively correlated with mental health outcomes. Also, for example, in Tokyo, in Japan, they did also this survey, which also look at the, let's say, the people that had a green view in their homes, also an important aspect to consider, as I was mentioning before. So here, for example, you see other papers recently published on this topic. For example, the first one on the top, it was sent to students from 2 universities in Bulgaria, for example. So to see how they were coping with the lockdowns and depending if they had access or not to indoor and outdoor greenery. The second one was particularly focused on if the people had plants in their homes and if it was, let's say, also helpful for coping with the pandemic. And the last one was also related to public and green space in the UK. All of these papers, as I will mention, have similar, let's say, conclusions in relation to the role of urban nature during the lockdowns. I was also involved in one of this research. Actually, our goal was also to evaluate the changes in the exposure to nature during the lockdown and how this was associated with mental health outcomes. And we did this in Spain and Portugal. So now it's a bit far away. It's more almost, let's say, 1 year. But during the first peak of the pandemic in Spain, there was a very strict lockdown. So visits to natural or to public green spaces were not allowed, actually, until the early May. And in the other hand, in Portugal, there was a softer lockdown, so people could still visit some green and blue spaces. So there was basically quite different, the type of restrictions in both countries. So we circulated our online surveys in both countries. We got about 1,500 responses, more or less, in the two countries. And basically, I'm not going to show all the results, but just to say you that as we were expecting, because of these different lockdown conditions in Spain, it was much more important the contact with private natural spaces or green spaces, such as, for example, indoor plants or community private gardens. And this was related to less stress and somatization problems. And in the case of Portugal, the role of public natural spaces or green spaces and views to nature was also, let's say, was more prominent and associated to less stress and psychological problems, let's say. So that's very, very shortly, briefly presented. So just some implications for sustainable urbanism, and just trying to be fast here. It's clear from all these papers that I've briefly shown that there is a strong evidence that exposure to nature it has been a mental health coping strategy during the COVID-19 lockdowns. And obviously, with soft lockdowns, there was a prominent role of public urban green and blue spaces, so people were going there more frequently and they were using them more frequently than probably before let's say the pandemic. And with the strict lockdowns, it was much more important the access to private green spaces, because of course people couldn't access the public green spaces. So here there was an important role of indoor plants, of community private green spaces or private gardens, and also the importance of green views from the window, as I was mentioned at the beginning. So there are very quick and straightforward implications in terms of environmental and health justice. So basically here, if you say, okay, there is these lockdowns, so if there is a strict lockdown, people living in disadvantaged and densely populated neighborhoods, as we have, for example, in Barcelona, with generally poor housing conditions, with no access to private green space, of course, no access to green gardens, for example, to private gardens, they have probably likely suffer more mental health problems during these lockdowns. And then there is a quite obvious policy implications for decision makers, that is that they have to ensure safe access to public green spaces and blue spaces during pandemic times, now and in the future, if there is more pandemics, and especially this is important for deprived neighborhoods, as I've just mentioned. And I just want to finish with some maybe food for thought or for discussion later. And this is this phenomena that we are seeing in many countries, like in Spain or in UK, that it is called this coronavirus exodus. So that people now is like trying to move out from cities if they can. They are looking for larger homes, probably because they want more access or more exposure to nature. They want to have probably their own garden, or they don't want to be, let's say, locked locked again in a city. So this is a phenomenon we are seeing, and it will have a lot of implications, I think, in the future. And just two main questions about this. So what this will imply in terms of urban planning? It will imply more urban sprawl in peri-urban areas. So let's say a kind of negative consequence, or it will be an opportunity maybe to reverse the population and aging in rural areas. So people go to, let's say, more rural areas and try to reverse the population trend that we see, for example, in Spain. So those are two questions that maybe we can discuss later. The second thing the last thing that I wanted to discuss is this idea that compact cities like Barcelona, for example, they implemented a lot of, during the pandemic, they have implemented what we call the tactical urbanism. So this kind of temporary urbanism, like enlarging sidewalls with this kind of blocks and painting the streets. But at the same time, the city council is trying to make these changes permanent with what they call the green corridors that they will be implemented in compact neighborhoods of Barcelona, like Eixample, which is quite, let's say, it will be a very relevant change because, of course, this will imply also a reduction of car space, and this is always challenging in compact cities. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, sorry if I'm taking too much time, is the question of green building. So we have realized that people want to have more green in their homes, in their own flats or their own houses, but we have to also take into account that in general, green buildings are more expensive, so less affordable for everybody. For example, here, this famous building from Milano, the Bosco Verticale, can be up to 12,000 euros per square meter, so not, let's say, affordable for the common citizen. So we have to also take into account this, that green buildings, of course, they have a lot of benefits, but they can be less affordable if we, let's say, if the government doesn't intervene to a certain extent. Thank you very much for the attention. I'm happy to discuss further all these topics.
Thank you, Francesc, for that comprehensive view on the importance of green spaces, and also thank you, Annika, for your views also on green spaces and health. We'll be moving later on to discuss more in depth about these topics. But as Francesc mentioned during his presentation, there are people now buying houses outside the cities, and then they work at the cities. This put a lot of pressure in the transport and the public transport as well. So we have an expert from public transport and mobility, Marie-Léa Rousseau. Marie-Léa, would you like to share your insights on mobility and sustainability in urbanism? Marie-Léa, I think you are mute right now.
So thank you for giving me the floor, sorry. So I would like to introduce this short presentation with a few words by French philosopher Cynthia Fleury, who said that the 2020 year marked the experiential entry into the systematic vulnerability of the 21st century. And we know that cities were built on a culture of immobility until the development of the railway during the Industrial Revolution. Then there was an urban transition, from the pedestrian to the car city, according to urbanist Markville, with the democratization of private car use throughout the 20th century. And now, in a globalized and connected world, our lifestyle and living spaces have been shaped by the propensity of people, goods, services, and information to move ever faster, further, and cheaper, which economist Yves Crozet called hypermobility. And of course, this has, consequences because, transport product, the biggest part of greenhouse gas in France in 2019. That's also the case, in Europe. And so yet 2020, marks a common experience of a global world, somehow forced to rest. But, on the first side, the lockdown put us in the extremely local aspect of our living space, and on the other hand, on the extremely global aspect of our telecommunication, according to philosopher Fabienne Brugère. So it really, raises a lot of questions about our mobility habits, in post-COVID cities. And I think that the first of all, urbanism in post-COVID cities will have to adapt itself to the increase of home office, which of course raises questions about proximity to urban services for all. So it has accelerated, for example, the reflection upon concepts like the city of 15 minutes, developed by Carlos Moreno, with the core idea that major urban functions should be accessible in less than 15 minutes by foot. And so post-COVID city should tend toward a city of short distance in terms of logistics as well as in terms of mobilities. And so it should be designed in such a way that it encourages the use of soft mode, such as walking, bicycle, or even free-floating. And it's all the more important that we are confronted with a growing risk of, health problems related to sedentary lifestyle with home office. So, for example, the pandemic, boosted the creation of provisory cycling facilities called Corona Piste in Greater Paris, since the streets were deserted by cars during the lockdowns. And this kind of initiative, which is called Tactical Urbanism, contributes to change, our perception of how to reuse an existing place depending on circumstances. So who would have imagined a place like the Champs-Élysées full of bicycles when we know that, around 3,000 cars by hour circulate on this avenue on a daily basis? Second, let's not forget that the need to find a sustainable solution for mobility of proximity won't diminish the need for people to circulate at different territorial scale. We know that, according to studies, that half of jobs in metropolis are eligible for home office, but that's not necessarily the case, in small and medium-sized cities. And the fact that there is a generalization of home office doesn't mean that people won't need to go to their working place on a regular basis. So urbanism in post-COVID city, must foster intermodality by encouraging the combination of different transport modes in order to boost the use of collective transport mode over the use of private car use. And the problem is that, with social distancing, there was a clear decline of the use of collective transport mode. So this question of social distances raises, issues in terms of arbitration between individual preferences, for example, for private car use, and sustainable, urbanism, which means, tending toward the use of collective transport mode. So this is particularly true, for example, in regard with the residential mobilities for city dwellers to the countryside. From a human point of view, I think that everybody can relate to the need for a large individual property in the countryside rather than staying in a collective residence in the city. But we know that these residential mobilities raise issues in terms of urban sprawl, of course, across the city borders, but also in terms, of mobilities with the private car use. And so that's really, a question that is risen is arbitration, between what are our individual preferences, which is not always a choice, and on the other hand, what are the restrictions related, to the construction of sustainable urbanism. And as a last point, because I don't want to be too long, I would say that mobility is a beating heart of the challenge towards the construction of sustainable urbanism, and it profoundly, connects and questions all the interdependencies at all territorial scales that must be taken into account in order to build a resilient and sustainable cities. Because we can't think, of course, housing policies without mobility policy. We can't think a sustainable city without coordinating its urban development with its neighboring territories. And we can't think a sustainable city without having a global approach of its externalities as part of a global system. So it really requires to build what Jean-Marc Hoffner called a governance of interdependency at all territorial scales, where mobility will be at the center of the reflection to connect all other urban functions such as housing, education, and so on. Thank you. I hope that I wasn't too long.
Thank you, Marie-Léa. It was perfect, and thank you for bringing those challenges and also potential solutions that we see in the construction of urbanism. We have received many new answers in our Mentee, so we're gonna go quickly to our Mentee because our next speaker will be explaining how the role of citizens in the construction of sustainable cities. So, of course, we have to integrate the views of our active audience in here. We have new words here. We have more participation. We see more conscious. We see less people in the cities. So we see already the reactions to those presentations and how this work will play a role. And what is important now, and I want to invite Evelise to explain a bit more, is like, how can we integrate these views? How can we integrate our citizens to construct these new cities, to identify challenges, to be part of the process? So we have Evelise from Pompeu Fabra University from Barcelona, sharing her views on citizenship and sustainable urbanism.
Thank you, Ricardo. I think as the other speakers has mentioned, we have different. The COVID situation has pointed different topics that were not used to be in the main discussion of how to promote a sustainable city, And I think the COVID could address the inequalities that we have and the real necessities that we need for our cities and the basics. So as Marie-Léa has mentioned, I think the structure of the cities was based for a specific production, and I think COVID started to give the opportunity for us to address how can we create a city for people, and how can we bring people back from the main topic of this urbanism, and in this topic, I think the COVID has also addressed the necessity of applying evidence-based public policies. And I want to mention, just a matter of context, that we have the citizen participation, and in the academy we have the citizen science, And I think they both are a good approach for us to think about sustainable cities in the future. And I don't know if you know a bit about citizen science, but the idea is that experts have recognized that when we set research priorities, most of them need to be sustained by their societal significance. And at the same time, most of the researchers' agendas that we used to have were defined by scientists, policymakers, or specific pressured groups, and not necessarily all the citizens. And I think that in one hand, the citizen science can can help us to ensure that we are doing more locally relevant and personalized research agenda, and on the other hand, it can help us to promote the local engagement of citizens and provide scientific literacy that could benefit, I think, all the society for how to create cities in the future, no? And I think the COVID presents us some opportunities for it and some challenges, no? And regarding the opportunities, I think the COVID has strengthened the need of sharing knowledges and abilities and resources for a common goal, no? Each one of us, we had one specific part of the responsibility for the COVID as professionals, as personal, as public health workers, and I think this is the point that the COVID bring to us in a common sense and without the frontiers, no, of specific countries and institutions. And at the same time, the COVID has redefined our way to get in contact and participate, which could present us new opportunities and challenges in this topic as well. And with it, the technology has become crucial for our daily lives, and we could increase our expertise and use them. No, I think now we are using Microsoft Teams, and actually before COVID, I've never used this before. No, it's my expertise, my new expertise, and our new expertise, and the citizen science. At the same time, has become a distraction and a recreational activity during COVID. And during the confinement, people will start to understand what is R in epidemiology. People will start to understand some concepts that doesn't used to be outside academia or public policies. And I think this is interesting as well as an opportunity for us, no? And some specific citizen science projects had increased their participation during confinement. And at the same time, we have some challenges regarding it. And I think one of them is the time of response. We have some necessity of public policy based on evidence, but the evidence has different time to be constructed, no? So the importance to provide data to support, for example, the public health surveillance was addressed, and we discussed this every day, no, in the public health sector. And at the same time, the need to adapt to quickly to this new adaptation and to develop and use new collaboration tools, particularly in citizen science and citizen participation. There is one point that most of the projects needed to change their strategies, especially for those that involved in-person interactions. And at the same time, participatory public policies has been reduced in participation, and we need to understand how to use these new possibilities, no, in the cities. And I think the most important challenge for us is to reduce the bias of citizen participation in the processes of citizen science and public policy, no? The use of all these new tools has an important bias in age, in gender, in educational level, and income. So I think it's important to understand that the COVID has increased even more this bias. A lot of people who will use not to have access to technology or has poor access to technology, they are not well connected as we are here. And this could be addressed. And this is an important limitation, and to make sure that all voices are being heard, and the public policies for sustainable cities and also the evidence that we are creating are being based on all these different publics and different citizens' necessities. No? So I think most of the reflections that I want to put is related to that. And I think it's important that all of us are related to it. It's funny because Francesc has just presented his study. I answered the questionnaire of his study, and it's nice to see the results, Francesc. And it was really important for me when I was confined to see that somebody was worried about it and wanted to do something. But of course, I had access to what people in university are doing, and we don't know exactly who are all the people and how to address, how to increase the dissemination of results, of necessities, no, and how to create, I don't know, the discussion for all and include all of the in this discussion. So I think this I also don't want to be too long, but I think this is one important point, and I think for our situation now, we are creating complex systems and complex situations that we need to be rigorous to include all voices in this and to have interdisciplinary approach to address this complexity. So thank you, and I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing those important views on the role of citizens in the construction of sustainable urbanism. Now, including citizens and trying to keep this as interactive as possible, we have prepared another Mentee question for the audience. Our next Mentee question is, how do you feel about remote studying or working? We know that there are very mixed views about this topic. Some of them find it comfortable, some of them find it more sustainable, and there's also other views on how this have an impact in mental health. And also it might depend on the access that those students have to green spaces. In that view, Annika would you like to expand on how, on your field of research and how these green spaces and health in universities play a role on how we feel about remote working? Annika, I think your microphone is mute.
So
Thanks.
now you hear me, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. The pandemic has shown us that it is possible to meet each other this way on Zoom or Teams or at a distance. But I actually think it has also shown us that it is not enough. We cannot only meet this way. And as a clinician, I have also seen like patients not feeling very good with only seeing their classmates or colleagues on the screen all day long. And also here in Sweden, we have this phenomena of people moving out of town and buying houses. They don't feel they need to live in the city when they don't go to their workplaces anyway. But I think this change is temporary, because what the pandemic has shown us is that we want more. We need more. We need eye contact, and we need real meetings. And some people have suggested that this pandemic is like the death for our cities, but I think it will be the other way around. The post-pandemic phase, I think, will be a revival for real meetings. And the cities will still be an important place where we go to live and to meet each other, just as they were in the beginning when they were formed. And maybe we can see it as a chance to form them again, because we don't want to live isolated from each other in the long run. But we need to plan and organize the cities in ways that promotes our health and also other species' health. And the pandemic has shown us that we in the cities need places where we can hang out with our friends and neighbors and colleagues and classmates in a safe way. And it has put in the light on the need for urban green space as Francesc told us all about, and parks and playgrounds for children as well. And the fact that we have not been able to travel as usual has shown us that we need surroundings for recreation and exercise and play and socializing and maybe even adventures near our homes, because it won't be sustainable to return to traveling the pre-pandemic way. And in the cities, we also have like problems with air pollutions and traffic noise and urban heat islands, which Francesc also told us about. And that is a problem that green space actually can help us to ease. And if we also use the city green space in a way that promotes biodiversity, it will contribute to a good planetary health as well. And when we organize the post-COVID cities, we need to demand the right things. Of course, we need all this transports and places to live and work, but we also need like fresh air and the ability to stroll and bike in a safe way, and spaces where it's quiet, and spaces where we can meet up and socialize, and we need art and we need adventures. Because we cannot always travel to get all this stuff in the future. And also, when it comes to green space, we know from studies that experiences of nature makes us more environmental friendly, especially if we are exposed to nature environments as kids, but also as grown-ups. We do more environmental friendly choices. And that is a very important thing. So we have to organize the cities in a way that also exposes for a little bit of nature. And my wish and belief is that the post-COVID city will be respectful to the health and the needs of all its inhabitants, and both humans and other species.
Thank you, Annika. Now, if we can go back to the result of our Mentee question, we see that there is a clear division among students. We see a division. Some of them like to study and work remotely, and some of them don't. So with this views in mind, and also with what Annika said about are these changes here to stay? Annika stated that they are not. But I want to know what is the reaction from the other speakers. And also, while we hear those interesting reactions, we are going to introduce our next Mentee question, which is exactly about this topic. Would there be a need for cities as we know them? Yes, no, or you don't know? Maybe before you answer, we can listen to some comment from our other speakers. Are these changes created by COVID here to stay, or are they just temporary? What do you think? I see I think Francesc, would you like to react to it?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, should I react on the question or on the debate so far?
On the debate so far, do you think that these changes created by COVID are here to stay, or are they temporary?
I like what Annika said about that this exodus to the outside cities is going to be temporary. Let's say I would like that this is going to be true. But I'm not that sure. I have the feeling that some of the, let's say, pandemic changes like teleworking are going to be, let's say, are going to stay. Probably not in the degree that we are doing now. Of course, that people will want to come back to physical meetings, physical conference, and so on, or personal, and so on. But I think that there will be still a lot of, I mean that remote working will be there to stay. So some of these trends that we are seeing now about people going out from cities, I think that I don't know to what extent they will, let's say, reverse in the future. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting topic. And as I said, for me, the key question is these people who are looking to go out from the cities now. Actually, in Barcelona, there was a recent survey that was done by the city council, and I think that was, I don't know what was the percentage, but a very substantial percentage of the people, of the citizens that were asked, they were saying that if they could, they would, let's say, leave the city and live outside the city. So this is a very important trend. And yeah, as I said, this for me, it's the crucial thing is if these people are looking for places to stay in the periphery, in the peri-urban areas, so creating more urban sprawl, that of course that will have a very negative impact on the territory and on ecosystems and so on, and it will to some extent also increase mobility between the periphery and the cities. So something that of course we don't want, or maybe there is a percentage of these people that will really stay or they will move to rural areas and they will stay there and they will not, let's say, commute every day to the city. So for me, it's a bit the question mark here. But of course, we will need cities in the post-pandemic.
Thank you, Francesc. And I would also like to give a reminder to the audience, if you have any question for panelists in particular or for the panel as a whole, you can always type the question in the chat, and we're going to go back to those questions at the end of this panel debate. Now, going back to our Mentee and to see the results of the audience, well, everyone agrees that there will be a need for a city after COVID. So I want to bring this to our next topic. Since EUTOPIA is a university network and an alliance of students, how do you think that COVID will play a role when it comes to the integration of universities and cities? And specifically, what is the role of universities in the construction of these sustainable cities and integrating the city in the university? We have also a Mentee question for this, but first we would like to hear from Evelise. What are your opinions about this? What is the university? What the university can do to shape the discussion?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, this is an interesting topic. I think historically there is a gap between university, society, and public policy in time and knowledge knowledge transfer. No, and I personally think that the COVID was. I've already mentioned something on it, but I personally think that the COVID has put this issue into the table of discussion, no? And I feel that not necessarily has increased or decreased, but put this in as a topic, in an important topic, and I think this was the first time that it was put in that intensity and relevance, no? So I think that it proposed a change, and then the change is not necessarily the integration, but also how do we do science and university, no? Because we don't know, we also don't know where are we going to. So the university is also starting to address this kind of question now. If this society is changing, are we changing as well, and how can we do this? So I think it's an important possibility of increase this kind of integration, and I think that, as I mentioned, the citizen science is a possibility that could give us different levels of participation. And historically, people used to be in the level 1 of participation. Let's see, that the citizens was used as censors or a source of data, no? But then the idea is to improve this participation as interpreters of the data, and to create the problem and the data collection, to do the problem, to make the analysis, to help universities with the dissemination of knowledge. And I think this is an important point that the COVID could address for us at this point. So it's interesting to see the changes, and I think there is a lot of opportunities in this way.
Thank you, Evelise. As we see the answer from the audience in our Mentee, they argue that it has increased the relation between the universities and society. But we want to bring a question for discussion. In this moment that cities that they have always been university cities, and students moving from those cities to their hometowns or moving to the capital just to study in there, how has this presented an impact, not only for the relation of students and city, but how is this an impact in the emission of, for example, of gases due to transport from students? Because students sometimes they travel 2-3 times. I mean, that's the tradition in Belgium. They go back to their home cities during the weekends. So how do you think, Marie-Léa Rousseau, how do you think it will present a challenge now that the students are mostly studying remotely?
I don't hear really well, your question, because there are a lot of noise, but, I understand that it's about, the mobility of students. Yes. Well, I think anyway, the question is, will there be, the idea is that students will still need to go to the university. They still need to go to the university, especially, when they work in field, when it's necessary, that, they go to course and so on. And so the question, I don't know. I don't have the question in mind, so it's very hard for me to build my answer. I am sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. We want to know how the changes created by studying remotely have affected the pressure that we see on the public transport, since students are not moving from their hometowns to the cities where they study.
Okay. So if it's about remote working. The first thing that in my opinion, is important is that students still need to go to the university regularly, at least, once or twice a day, in the week, because it's important to maintain social contact with other people and with teacher. And of course, it raises a lot of questions about where are they going to live? Is it, for example, necessary for them to move, for example, in Cergy if they live in Paris, or otherwise? And so it also raises question about, for example, housing policies. How is it? Will it be possible, for example, for the student to find apartments where they can go only when it's necessary? And so beyond transport policies, it really requires ways to foster housing policy, how they can, move each week and then go back to the weekend, and how we can help them, for example, to have free tickets, or I don't really know how to build my answer, sorry.
Thank you. And now I would like to call, we have a question for the entire panel, a question from the audience, and it's most a personal question. They want to know, what has been your inspirations or driving forces to study this subject? What is your passion to engage in this topic of sustainability and urbanism?
I can maybe answer first. My let's say inspiration or driving forces to study, let's say urban ecology or urban greening. I mean, it comes from let's say a long time, since my bachelor and PhD. I'm working on these topics, but maybe I could say that my inspiration to work on this study about the role of nature during the lockdown came during the first days of the lockdown in Spain. I was in Barcelona. I was locked down with my family in an apartment. We have a balcony, and some plants, house plants, but not really too much access to green space. I mean, there is a roof also in our building, but not really green roof. So I realized that I see also some pictures at that time of, for example, famous people that were doing the lockdown in big gardens and so on. I say, okay, that's really something that you can see here, that the inequality in the access to green space if you are in a lockdown. So then I decided to promote this survey in Spain and later in Portugal, and that was basically the inspiration, let's say.
Thank you, Francesc. Do we have other opinions on your personal involvement in this topic?
Maybe I can answer as well.
Please, Evelise.
I'm from Brazil, and I live in a city with 12 million people there. I'm from São Paulo. And curiously, I used to live exactly in the other side of the street from the biggest urban park in the world, giant park that we had in São Paulo boundaries. And so for me, I'm environmental manager, and I used to grow up in this park, every Sunday going there and living the park. And when I entered in the university, I realized that nobody has the opportunity that I used to. And I realized how important was that park for my mindset and how to think about myself and my connections with people and different people. So then I used to work, before coming to Europe, I used to work in vulnerable communities like favelas in São Paulo. And we used to work with health promotion and in environmental projects and in community health initiatives. And I think that's why I'm here now. I'm personally in a project that will propose different green interventions in cities based on participatory approaches. So different 6 cities in Europe will create different interventions based on specific participatory approaches to decide where to do the interventions, which kind of interventions, and what they want us to analyze during these processes. And I really think that this is important, because the knowledge that we need to create, it's for us to live, to create better health for all of us. So that's why I think that my background make me to think that each one of us need different things, have different backgrounds, and it's important to contribute for a health and just society,
Thank you, Evelise. And with 10 minutes on the clock for the end of this debate, I have a final question for you, and also if you can bring your closing remarks. And it's about the main question of this debate. We want to hear from you, from all of you, how COVID will play a role in the achievement of SDGs in the urban area. Is it going to present a challenge, or is it going to present an opportunity? With that question in mind, Annika, would you like to give a word on this topic?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The question is COVID presenting a challenge and an opportunity in the achievement of SDGs in the urban area?
If it is a challenge or an opportunity, I would say that it is an opportunity, because I think at least, as it has been everywhere, it has really shown us some problems that maybe we were aware of them before, but now they make us even more aware. Of course, it's also a problem that it has. We have put in a very much focus on COVID and also on the economy, and maybe some other questions can fall out of sight, but I don't think that will be the result. I'm a positive person, so I think it's an opportunity.
Thank you, Annika, for those positive views on this topic. Marie-Léa, Rousseau, would you like to comment on this question?
Yes, thank you. I hear better now. Well, I would say it's both a challenge and an opportunity, because I would say that we were aware about a lot of challenges for sustainable development, since the 80s, 90s. There were already, a lot of theoretical approach to build a sustainable city. For example, with the Aalborg Charta in 1940, but I would say that the COVID crisis really, put us in the reality of what will be systematic vulnerability in the 21st century. So we have experiences for real. And so this is going to force us to accelerate, the ecological transition. And I think that it also brings us to rethink our urban models. And it represents, a challenge, for example, for the compact city, because of course, we wanted to build a compact city in order to, avoid urban sprawl, across the city borders. And now with the COVID and possibly other pandemics in the future, we don't know, what will be the future look like, but possibly we will have other pandemic. And it's very possible that we have to rethink our urban model of capacity. And with this idea that, capacity implies, of course, proximity, of people with other people. And it does not necessarily, implies the proximity with urban services. And that's why there is this idea that we have to rethink a model that is built more on coherency than capacity itself, I would say. And how to reuse also the existing place. So that was what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Marie-Léa, for your answer. Now, always on the same question to close this debate. Evelise, what is your opinion on the challenges or opportunity of COVID?
And I think there's both, as Marie-Léa and Annika has mentioned. And I want to address some challenges that I think is important for us, that the COVID has increased inequalities in general, and inequalities in access to jobs, to food, to to information as well, because now information is passing through different tools that was not the normal way in the beginning. So I think when you are talking about sustainable development goals, we are talking about some different agendas, no, that the COVID has impacted in different ways as well. And again, I think it's important to understand how we are creating new minorities and increasing minorities that we already had at the beginning and before the COVID crisis. And we are starting now a crisis that we've never have passed through before. That is not necessarily one specific region in the world that is affected, and the others can make some kind of investments or different kind of cooperations and to address them. But it's a worldwide one. And I think this is an important challenge, because we saw during this last year that the frontiers is one important topic, no? And we have migrant crisis in Europe with different different perspectives from different European countries, and we at the same time as Europe, the discussion is different than in a national level and in local levels as well. And I think the COVID is one point that is in the middle of different crises that it's enhancing their intensity, no? And I think this is one important challenge for us, because in cities is where life happens, no? We love to be together, we are in cities, or was Annika and Francesc mentioned that probably people are leaving cities, but they are also going to smaller cities. And I think we need to also address the role of small cities or medium cities and how they are proposing these changes, no, and how they have enough, and if they have enough resources to do these changes and to receive all these people they are receiving as well. So I think there is different there is an inequality. There is different levels of access to this real city, no, the law, the rights that we had to leave the city, and different points COVID is also addressing. And to achieve sustainable development goals, I think we need to understand how each one of these specific agendas are being influenced by the COVID pandemic. So I just want to put here also the big challenge that I think is how institutional how institutions are structured, and how can we think all this intensity of inequalities in a way to address them well and achieve the sustainable development goals in the COVID crisis, no? And that's it.
Thank you, Evelise. And now, due to problems with time, Francesc, I'm going to need to ask you to briefly explain, is COVID an opportunity or a challenge for the sustainable cities?
Yeah, I will try to be brief because we are nearly out of time. I think if you refer to the SDG 11 about making cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, I think that the COVID should definitely be an opportunity for cities to achieve this goal. I mean, we have been talking about this during this debate, that probably COVID has accelerated some of the trends that some cities were already implementing, like more space for pedestrians, more space for bikes in the city, more space, or let's say more recognition of the value of green spaces and urban nature within cities and in peri-urban areas. Since this is something that this pandemic has, let's say, put very clearly on the agenda, on the urban agenda. And what else? Also, I think that the COVID, the pandemic has shown is that we need to build healthy cities, no? So that cities that people can live and that are safe, that are, let's say, not only in terms of disease, but also in terms of having a good quality air quality, a good let's say environment in general. And also of course also I think the importance of the adaptation of cities to the impacts of climate change, because at the end also the pandemic is very much, I think, related to climate change, no? And all the impacts that we will let's say all the impacts that are also linked to the climate change, I think that need to be also being discussed in the context of cities. So yeah, I think that it's definitely an opportunity to make urban decision makers to make this, let's say, what we call this ecological transition to a more healthy and inclusive, and something that also Evelise said, that I think it's important that all these transitions are, let's say, done in a way that are inclusive and then let's say that the equity or the justice lens are there as well, because at the end otherwise it won't work if only we create, let's say, healthy cities for the wealthy, that for the people who can afford having a private garden, then it does not gonna work. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Francesc. I know it's difficult to say in this short amount of time when we have like such an extensive topic as this one, but at the same time, I would like to thank all the speakers for their insightful views and for bringing their expertise and innovative research to this audience and to this Utopia Week. Finally, before we go, I have an announcement for all those students who have been inspired by the views of this panel debate. We invite you to join our Commission for Sustainability, who will be receiving applications for the upcoming years. And also, if you want to participate in the events that we organize, or if you want to enroll more in Utopia, we have the think tank where you can share your ideas, or the student council where you can become an active voice for change, for advocate for sustainability, SDGs, and for a better future for our societies. With that being said, thank you so much again to our distinguished speakers, and we hope to see you again in the future.